Automated digital heist that, honestly, completely rewrites the rules of cyber attacks. The team at Reversing Labs has uncovered an active phishing campaign targeting Microsoft 365 users. But here is the absolutely wild part. It bypasses traditional password theft entirely. The attackers, they aren't trying to guess your password. They aren't even trying to steal it. Instead, they're using a perfectly legitimate, built-in login flow directly against you.
It sounds like a total paradox, right? What if a hacker could take over your account without ever knowing your password? We're so conditioned to think of passwords as the ultimate key to the castle, but the threat actors behind this campaign have realized something profound. Our inherent trust in those standard, super familiar Microsoft login screens is exactly what makes this attack so incredibly dangerous. If it looks right, we trust it. And today, we're going to look at exactly how that trust gets exploited.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the invisible M365 threat. Second, the anatomy of the attack. Third, evading security detection. And finally, defending your organization. We're going to cover both the human psychological trickery and the deep technical evasion tactics. Section 1. The invisible M365 threat. Bypassing the front door. You can really think of this campaign as a modern-day digital Trojan horse.
See, the attackers aren't violently breaking down the door. They're tricking the user into willingly opening it by weaponizing what's known as the device code flow. You actually probably know this feature. It's the standard Microsoft authentication process for devices where typing out a long, complex password is just a huge pain, like setting up an app on a smart TV or using a bare-bones command line tool. It is meant to be a helpful shortcut, but the attackers have turned this baseline feature into a weapon.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the manipulation works in practice. In a legitimate scenario, you are typing a code to authorize your own smart TV that is sitting right in front of you. But in the phishing trap, the victim types a code into a real Microsoft login page, except that code authorizes a remote device that is entirely controlled by the attacker. You are completing a totally real authentication process, but you are quietly handing over account control to someone who could be thousands of miles away.
All right, moving to Section 2, Anatomy of the attack, executing the exploit. Let's unpack the exact mechanics of how this near-invisible account takeover actually happens, step by step. Step 1, it all starts with a highly realistic, business-themed email lure. Maybe it looks like a routine approval request from a known vendor. Step 2, the victim clicks an image attached to the email and gets redirected to a fake landing page. This page mimics genuine Microsoft design perfectly, and it prompts the user to copy a shortcode. Step 3, and honestly, this is the genius part. The user is told to click a link that takes them to the actual real Microsoft device login page where they paste the code. Because they are on an actual Microsoft domain, the victim sees absolutely nothing out of the ordinary. And finally, Step 4, the system completes the Microsoft device authorization grant flow and boom, the attacker receives the access token. So what does this all mean? Well, the aftermath is severe. Because the user authenticated the attacker's device, the attacker now holds a perfectly valid access token for that specific Microsoft 365 account. Remember, no password was ever stolen, but the digital heist is a total success. Armed with this token, the threat actor can read internal emails, grab sensitive files, and crucially begin moving laterally inside the target organization to do even more damage. Section 3. Evading security detection, hiding in plain sight. These attackers didn't just design a clever psychological trick. They built a highly polished phishing kit specifically engineered to evade automated detection. Now, what's really interesting about this evasion strategy is the deep irony of it all. They rely on the invisible. The threat actors embed invisible Unicode characters, things like a zero-width space or a word joiner, directly into the HTML of their fake landing pages. When an automated security scanner tries to read the code, the text is completely broken up by things the human eye literally can't even see. It completely shatters standard signature matching.
And on top of those invisible characters, there's a whole other layer of evasion. The phishing entry point URLs are actually hosted on legitimate Akamai infrastructure. Akamai is, of course, one of the largest and most trusted content delivery networks on the planet. So by hosting their malicious kit on real, trusted infrastructure, the attackers add a massive blanket of deceptive legitimacy. Automated systems are incredibly hesitant to just block Akamai outright, which makes it incredibly hard to stop this attack automatically.
But hey, no attack is perfect, and the attacker has left a fingerprint. 4 seconds. While the victim is going through that login flow, the phishing kit's backend is constantly communicating with the attacker's host to coordinate the OAuth flow. Specifically, it fires off a post request every 4 seconds. This steady, rhythmic heartbeat creates a highly identifiable beacon cluster and a very specific network traffic signal. It's a fatal flaw by the attackers, and it's exactly what defenders can use to track them down.
Section 4. Defending your organization, locking the vault. Now that we know how they bypass the front door and hide in the network, let's ramp the energy back up and talk about how IT security teams can proactively hunt for these indicators.
Let's move to how this builds into actionable intelligence. When we look at the indicators of compromise from the Reversing Labs report, the challenge becomes pretty clear. Defenders need to block the phishing kit URLs, sure, but look at those network host names. login.microsoftonline.com and aka.ms/devicelogin. Those are completely legitimate Microsoft endpoints being abused in the attack. Because you obviously can't just block Microsoft, defenders have to rely on tools like the Yara rule listed here, which was authored by Malware Utkanos. This rule is brilliant because it specifically hunts for that unique combination we talked about earlier, those invisible Unicode characters paired directly with encoded authentication token artifacts hiding in the page source code.
So the crucial point is that defense requires a multi-layered approach. Here are the actionable, proactive strategies you need to take away from this explainer. First, you've got to train employees to heavily question any prompt asking them to copy and paste a code into a Microsoft login page. Second, visibility. Monitor your Entra ID sign-in logs specifically for unexpected device code grants, especially if the sign-in comes from a standard laptop instead of a known IoT or command line device. Third, deploy those Reversing Labs Yara detections to catch the phishing kits early. And finally, hunt your network logs for that rhythmic 4-second beacon traffic pattern.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to really ponder. If seeing is believing, how do you defend against an attack designed to look exactly like the truth? This whole campaign proves that our inherent trust in familiar corporate login screens is a major vulnerability all on its own. We have to stay vigilant, we have to look much deeper than just the surface visuals, and we absolutely have to secure the invisible pathways in our networks. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep your guard up out there.